Well, joining us now to discuss is former New York City Prosecutor Paul Callan. Paul, great to have you on. So what is the likelihood that we will see this magistrate judge tomorrow unseal this probable cause affidavit in light of the DOJ, especially saying that they are objecting to that?
You know, Brianna, I would have to say it's next to zero, the chances that the judge will release that affidavit. Of course, you can never say never in this day and age. It does involve a former president of the United States, so the rules could be varied. But remember, this affidavit has to do with an ongoing, potentially criminal investigation. And you don't normally reveal the details of a criminal investigation until after an arrest is made or an indictment is handed down. So it would be truly extraordinary if all of the details of the Department of Justice investigation were released in advance of an indictment.
Let me ask you this, Paul, because legally, and God knows you know better than any of us, this would be highly unusual, but of course, it is also highly unusual to see the FBI search a former president's home. And I wonder, within the bounds of how judges consider this sort of thing, do they consider only the law, and in this case, the classified nature of the material, or do they also, are they allowed, do they have the leeway to consider the political environment and so on as factors in this?
There's always the factor, Jim, of the public's right to know, and that's why we have open courtrooms in the United States as a general rule. However, what we're confronted with here, yes, we do have an extraordinary thing. A former president of the United States' residence was, searched by the FBI. Very, very unusual. But we also have apparently highly classified information that is part of the whole thing and documents that were seized. So to unseal this affidavit, you might be unsealing classified documents, in addition to the fact that we don't normally reveal what's going on in a criminal investigation preceding an indictment or criminal charges.
Let me ask you your thoughts on what we have just now reported, and that is the FBI has been in communication and had interviewed both Pat Cipollone and Patrick Philbin, and they, we should note, were designated by former President Trump shortly before he left office to handle all of his archives. What do you make of the fact that we now know months ago the FBI had been reaching out to them in an attempt to get some of these classified materials back?
Well, it's starting to look like there was a long effort to have voluntary cooperation on the return of these documents. Many contacts between the FBI and probably the Department of Justice and the former president's staff to get these things back without the use of a warrant or a search warrant of the president's residence. So I think that's all that tells us. I find it also to be interesting that Trump traditionally tends to blame other people, and we've had some indications that he, early in this investigation, was indicating that maybe he wasn't aware of all of the things that were in the boxes that were taken to Mar-a-Lago. So what they would be doing by interviewing Cipollone and others is to kind of take them out of the picture and show that they didn't place anything in the boxes, or possibly they hadn't even personally reviewed all of the documents.
Or they've been cooperating.
They've been fully cooperative, and they're not people who would be working adversely to the president's interests.
We also, of course, as we speak, Paul, have the remarkable situation of the president's former personal lawyer being questioned in that criminal probe in Georgia, where he's been identified as a target of that investigation. I believe you said this before, but I believe your view is the chances of Giuliani doing anything but taking the fifth are very low. Is that right?
Yes, it would be extraordinary if he did anything but that. He's been notified that he's a target potentially of the grand jury. And it wouldn't specifically be this grand jury. Remember, this is a special investigative grand jury, but they can make recommendations about bringing criminal charges. So he'd be very, very foolish to do anything except assert the Fifth Amendment. And bear in mind, the President of the United States has already asserted the Fifth Amendment in a New York investigation, I think 400 times. So it's not going to surprise me if Giuliani asserts the Fifth as well.
Is he someone you think prosecutors would even rely on as a witness that they would like to work with, given his past and how loose he has been with the truth, or not?
I think prosecutors would love to have the cooperation of Giuliani. He would be a valuable witness for them in any investigation. I do think in light of his prior statements, it's highly unlikely that he's going to go that route.
Paul
Paul
Callan.
Callan? Yeah. Well, we're going to jointly thank you, Paul Callan. Always good to, it's always good to have you. That's how much we like having you on the show.
Get a double thanks.